Hello, everybody. My name is George Petersen. I'm the Senior Program Manager for Real ID at TSA. I'm here in lieu of Simone Davis. Thank you very much. David Lim has told me a lot about you. I'm very excited to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me so I could present everything you need to know about Real ID. Okay, let's go to the next one. So a little bit about TSA. TSA's mission is to oversee all security modes for transportation. It was created in the aftermath of 9/11. Our primary mission is to protect the nation's transportation infrastructure to ensure freedom of movement of people and commerce. Some of the things that we directly oversee include commercial general aviation, mass transit systems, freight and passenger rail, highways, pipelines, and ports. At our airports, of which there are over 400 and some airports in which TSA is responsible for security, we deal with over 2 million travelers across 440 airports to ensure the security of the traveling public. Next slide. Now, a little bit about Real ID. Congress passed the Real ID Act in 2005 as based on recommendations from the 9/11 Commission. It's intended to improve the level of identity assurance to help U.S. citizens, protect U.S. citizens and the U.S. infrastructure from terrorist or other attack. And there's a nice little thing in the bottom of the slide where social identification, the last opportunity to ensure that people are who they say they are and to check whether they're terrorists. So this is a very, very important act. What the act does is it establishes minimum standards for state-issued driver's license and ID cards and prohibits federal agencies from accepting identification from states for certain defined official purposes. And that includes boarding federally regulated commercial aircraft, accessing certain federal and military facilities, and entering nuclear power plants. In 2020, Congress also reaffirmed its support for the security benefits of Real ID with the Real ID Modernization Act, which enabled, it sort of brought the act up to standards in which reflect the changes that happen in operations and security, and enabled digital IDs called mobile driver's licenses after DHS published regulations. So we have very strong support for Real ID. On May 7, 2025 begins the card-based enforcement, which means that for those official use cases, which I specified, individuals that present a state-issued driver's license or ID card, it should be a Real ID, or they have to present another acceptable ID either to TSA or to the federal agency in which they're presenting. Now, so how are we doing on Real ID? You know, Real ID is spread across 56 different licensing jurisdictions. That would be the 50 states, District of Columbia, and our 5 territories. We have been conducting extensive engagements with our states, our stakeholder, and industry over the past 2 years. And we've made significant progress on that. Nationally, as of now, about 61% of all of the 295 million driver's license and ID cards that are issued by the states are Real ID. So that means we have 110 million that are not Real ID. So, you know, we're hoping that obviously not all these people are going to be flying airplanes. So that we hope that those individuals that do choose to travel to federal agencies and board federally regulated aircraft would either bring a Real ID, go get a Real ID, or bring another acceptable ID to the airport. Now, how do we know so much? We've implemented a number of data collection processes to help inform our enforcement planning. One of them is we collect data directly from the states. They provide us a status, generally monthly, on you know, how many IDs are issued and what types they are, whether they're Real ID, non-compliant ID, and legacy ID. Non-compliant ID is after a state has been certified to issue Real IDs, the individual that got it made the conscious decision to not get a Real ID and obtain a non-compliant driver's license or ID card. Whereas legacy cards are simply those that were issued by the state before they were certified to issue Real ID, and they just haven't renewed them yet. The other thing that we do is we collect data from what we call our CAT machines, the credential authentication technology at the checkpoint. Many of you know of it. It's where you take your license, they put it in the system, sometimes takes a picture of yourself, and does a biographic match and electronically checks your credential. So we collect data from the CAT machines on the types of IDs that are passing through the checkpoint. And what we've seen is about, of all the state-issued driver's license and ID cards that are passing through TSA checkpoints, 78% of those are Real ID compliant. That's about 17% higher than like nationally what we have on the record, which is very, very good. And if you complies all of the list of additional acceptable IDs, about 81% of the IDs that are presented at the checkpoint today are considered acceptable IDs. That means about 19% of the people are coming with state-issued driver's license or ID cards that are not Real ID compliant. We also commissioned a bi-monthly national survey, basically to assess Real ID awareness, the attention for individuals to get a Real ID, and determine what other forms of acceptable ID the travelers have. As of March, which was our last survey, we found that 93% of individuals who plan to travel within the next year either have a Real ID or other acceptable ID. So the real challenge is ensure that if they do not have a Real ID, they have a non-compliant driver's license, that they do bring their alternate acceptable, another form of acceptable ID. Okay, next slide. Okay, so you heard me refer earlier that we're going to begin what they call card-based enforcement. That's the final phase. There's been many other phases. Some of the phases had to do with states had to issue by a certain time, and there was another issue in which certain DoD facilities implemented certain stuff. So this is the final phase of Real ID implementation, which is just general card-based enforcement. Individuals that present ID under the official use cases should have a Real ID or other acceptable ID. We will begin this enforcement, not just at TSA, but at all federal agencies, beginning May 7th, as directed by Congress and the American people. This is federal law, and the administration will fully enforce the law. Now, in January 2025, TSA did issue a final rule that permitted federal agencies to implement a phased enforcement plan if they determine it's appropriate upon consideration of relevant factors, including security, operational feasibility, and public impact. TSA will not use a phased approach, and we're going to begin full enforcement beginning May 7th of 2025. So that means that if travelers go to TSA security checkpoints and they present a state-issued driver's license or ID card, which is not Real ID compliant, they should understand that it's no longer be accepted as an acceptable form of ID at TSA checkpoints. So if you're 18 years or older, you must present a Real ID compliant or other acceptable ID. Now, passengers who present a non-compliant ID and who don't have any acceptable ID can expect to face delays, additional screening, and the possibility of not being permitted into the security checkpoint. Per longstanding TSA policy, passengers traveling without an acceptable form of ID may face significant wait times at the airport or could be denied access to the airport security checkpoint. So we recognize that we're approaching a busy summer travel season, and we're going to attempt to fully enforce Real ID effectively and efficiently. Real ID helps ensures that the reason that we're doing this is because Real ID is supposed to be a higher level of identity assurance. This helps us have more confidence that individuals who present a Real ID are who they say they are. And the Real ID helps reduce counterfeit and fraud by criminals and terrorists. So each airport will be focused on the enforcement of the law and its core security responsibilities. They will also maintain operational flexibility, and we're actively managing wait times and carrying out a seamless process. There's going to be a variety of measures to mitigate the operational impacts at the checkpoint. At the current rate of which we're looking at about 81% of acceptable IDs, which is about 19% people, that would add up to about 600,000 travelers per day, which would require additional procedures at the enforcement. Hopefully they'll bring acceptable forms and that number will drop. As the deadline approaches, we have a great understanding. We have a great working relationship with the states. Many of them are making fantastic efforts to accommodate individuals seeking to obtain a real ID. We fully expect the number of passengers to get real IDs to steadily increase. And we will continue to have random additional security measures for those without a real ID until it is considered no longer a security vulnerability. And in anticipation, we're using an all-hands approach to offset impacts at security screening checkpoints. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, that was 2 slides there. Sorry, I just...
David, is this the right slide?
This is beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
As far as like, we have been extremely engaged with our stakeholders over the last 2 years. Hopefully you have been a part of that in earlier engagement efforts. We began distributing educational flyers presenting non-compliant IDs a year ago. We launched a national advertising campaign in July of 2024. It's going to conclude on May 7th. We've always collaborated with the airline and aviation and the travel industry associations and their members to promote Real ID through their marketing channels. David Lim is amazing with that. And I mean, a lot of people on here, we really appreciate your support in leveraging TSA collateral or your own efforts to get the message down using your channels, communication channels. It's thank you very much. We held a virtual industry day on April 11th with over 350 attendees, in which we told them we're going to be fully enforcing. We have been collaborating with state DMVs to identify marketing and media opportunities. We conduct a national survey every other month. That's the information I recently gave you. And we've also corresponded directly with states that have like the lowest levels of compliance, urging them, to action. They are taking action, and also to provide any assistance possible. We've assisted in a lot of marketing and engagement opportunities by the state. They've done joint things at airports. We've had all kinds of examples across the country with different states of marketing opportunities. And of course, our Real ID collateral, professionally made, is available for free it's actually tsa.gov/RealID campaign toolkits. But the DHS.gov, that's the old website. It's transferred over to TSA. You'll be able to get it'll direct you right there. Our travel agency communities include Real ID in multiple channels. Corporations have included Real ID content in their travel portals and other communications. It's just very, very, all I can say is thank you very much to industry for your incredible support. United Airlines had a multi-wave communication strategies with targeted emails, the Uber campaign. We saw, right, states have done it. So I just want to say thank you for everybody for that. Next slide. Okay. As the deadline approaches, we're making a number of efforts to accommodate individuals. You can scan, what we have is we're going to have signage at the checkpoint and making it available for individuals that require it to help direct them to information that would help them get a Real ID. So they'll be able to scan the QR code, get a list of acceptable IDs, and there'll also be a link to the Real ID page. And the Real ID page has a link to every state. So no matter where you're from, you'll be able to look specifically for the requirements for your individual states. And again, just to say that clients not Real ID ready should be prepared for other acceptable forms of ID. Okay, the last thing is that we have this thing called the Real ID infographic. This is another one of our pieces of collateral. It's the next slide. Yes. It's another collateral which is freely available to you. It talks about what is Real ID, what do I need for it. It's a nice, tight infographic that has about all the information in easy to use format. And then finally, we have the video from our secretary. And I'm going to go quiet.
Hi, I'm Christine Ulm, the United States Secretary of Homeland Security. If you plan on traveling, we need your help to prevent delays and to prove your identity. Get a Real ID. Starting May 7th, you will need a Real ID to travel by air or to visit federal buildings in the United States. These IDs keep our country safe because they help prevent fraud and they enhance security. Please do your part to protect our country. Go today and don't delay. To learn more, go to dhs.gov/real-id. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to kind of read these questions down, so please keep typing them in. I'm going to start with, will people be able to travel by plane within the U.S. using their foreign passport?
Yeah, I believe so. I'll have to get back to you on that. The best place to look is on the list of acceptable IDs, but I believe so.
Okay.
I think foreign passports are acceptable ID.
Okay.
I'll have to double check.
Okay, yeah, that's an important one. That's a really good question. Just in case people haven't been able to get their IDs, but they have a passport. Is a photo of your Real ID complement on your phone okay? So I guess if you're, and maybe someone can clarify, if they have their Real ID on their license and they only have a picture of it on their phone, does that work?
So a foreign government issued passport is acceptable ID. That answers the first question.
Okay. And also a U.S. passport, right? Not just a foreign one.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I thought the question was specific to foreign passports.
Oh, it was. Thank you.
Yeah.
But just to be clear, it can be a U.S. passport or a foreign passport.
Yeah, U.S. passport or a U.S. passport card, enhanced driver's license.
And if they have it sounds like if is a photo of your Real ID on your phone, is that acceptable? Or does it have to actually be one that's tangible with them?
No. You have to have the physical credential. Now, if someone is talking about a mobile driver's license, is that the question? Is someone asking about a mobile driver's license that's issued by a state, like, because we have 15 states that issued it, such as Maryland. Is that a question? Like, how does mobile driver's license work?
It says, is a photo of your Real ID complement on your phone okay? And maybe it does mean mobile license.
Yeah, no. So people that have, there's only two ways to present a state-issued driver's license or ID card at the TSA checkpoint. One is their physical credential, which is, you pull out of your wallet. It's, the other one is if you have a mobile driver's licenses and that in which the state provisioned onto your phone, such as in your Apple Wallet or an Android or Google. Those things have to be read by what we call a mobile driver's license reader, because that information is cryptographically encrypted on the device and requires what we call a public key to access it. And the individual then will be on their phone, be asked, would you like to release this specific personal information? They would have to say yes. And then TSA will read their driver's license that is contained on their phone. A visual representation on the telephone is not acceptable ID. And the mobile driver's license will say whether it's a real ID or a non-compliant license, because the mobile driver's license is an electronic version of the underlying license. So if you have a real ID and you present and you have a mobile driver's license on your telephone, then you should be able to present the MDL at the checkpoint. The reader, if it has a reader, that is, they'll read it, they'll see it's a real ID, and that's how they'll know.
David, George, what if the checkpoint does not have a reader and they have the mobile license? It can. What is their option?
So there will be yeah. There's probably going to be a lot of places that don't have the readers, but TSA has done a significant job of expanding the number of checkpoints that now have what we call Cat 2s, which would facilitate, MDL readers. So anybody that wants that information, you can go to the TSA website, and they have a map and all the airports that have the readers and use it. But if you do not have the reader, and this happens sometimes too, the individual that's handling it is not yet obtained the qualification to, use the reader. So there might be a reader, but an unqualified person. Because remember, rolling out MDL requires not only rolling out the readers, but getting the training to all the individuals that would do it. Then you would use your physical license. Because we do require you to always carry your physical license, and because sometimes the reader doesn't work too. Sometimes there could be a power outage.
Okay, so good to plan ahead and have that back up with your physical license. Thank you. Why is Real ID required when I have a passport? It's my understanding this is the highest form of ID.
So if you have a passport, then yeah, you don't need a Real ID. Like we said, Real ID is one of the IDs that is acceptable at the TSA checkpoint. There's many other IDs that are acceptable, includes a state-issued enhanced driver's license, U.S. passport card, a DHS trusted travel card, such as Global Entry Nexus, a U.S. Department of Defense ID, permanent resident card, border crossing card, acceptable photo ID issued by a federally recognized tribal nation, foreign issued passport, Canadian provincials driver's license, a TWIC, an I-76 card, U.S. Merchant Marine credential, or a veteran health information card.
I'm going to just try to get to as many questions as we can. Yes, you can get a copy of the link to the video. Like I said, this is being recorded. So we will have this posted on the ArcCorp site .com, and it will be on under on-demand webinars. Also, the link will be sent in a follow-up email in the next few days. This is a question I think you probably answered it, George, is what do you think the delay in folks getting the Real ID? Sounds like maybe at the state level in some of the DMVs, is that correct?
Yeah, so, there are 56 different licensing jurisdictions, like I said. So the best way is to contact your DMV directly. States that have low compliance have reported to us that if they have an appointment system, usually their appointment system has already been filled out to its maximum capacity. But states we have found are doing all sorts of things to increase the capacity. Illinois has set up its own sort of super center in downtown Chicago. Only job is to do Real IDs. That's it. They don't do anything else there. Just come in and get a Real ID. Oregon, I know, went to the state legislature and got funding for what we call not to exceed. Basically, people that could help out during the surge period, and then when it dies down, then they can go back to normal level of operations. So all the states are doing everything they can. I think the important thing to do is if it looks like you're not going to be able to get a Real ID, or your people are not going to get a Real ID before a planned travel, they need to come to the airport very early. And so that, they can get through the screening, because the TSA, we don't want to like turn people away. If we can accommodate people by implementing, some additional security processes and then get them through, but those processes will take time, and it will slow the line. And
Is there, like, if someone doesn't show up with an ID, they've given themselves enough time, would they be taken like to a different area so the line keeps moving with everybody else, but these folks are taken to a different area?
yeah, we're
Try to help
definitely, we're definitely going to try to model the operations. You have to understand, every airport, once you've seen an airport, you've only seen one airport. So I'm not sure if you realize that all airports are configured differently because of their design and their space, so our operational priority is security. And then, efficiently, so like, I don't have the exact details on how everything's going to be doing, but I will be helping out at my airport locally for like 2 hours every morning for like the first couple of weeks. So like, if people do have acceptable IDs, we're hoping to get those people through, more quickly. So, how it will work out, we're just going to wait to see. But, there's a lot of intense planning, a lot of coordination with the airport, with the airlines, with all the partners that in there, and the FSDs, the federal security directors that manage all these things, and the assistant federal security directors, to try to come up with a plan that, will facilitate, the screening of these travelers. But, it will take extra time, because if you show up with that unacceptable ID, then you have to go through additional screening processes.
Great. No, helpful information for sure. I think this is an important question. What do travelers under the age of 18 need to travel under the REAL ID Act?
Travelers under the age of 18 are not required to present an ID.
Okay. So anyone 18 and older
Yes.
is required. Anyone under 18 not required. Okay, good to know.
Yes.
Can you provide examples? We sent that link, so just please, for anyone again that needs examples of what alternative IDs are, the link is in the questions area. If someone shows up there with a normal driver's license, I think you talked about a lot. If people show up without the REAL ID, what those options are for them. In Missouri, you get a paper REAL ID at the DMV office, good for 30 days. And
That's a good question.
To you. Can the paper ID be used at the TSA checkpoint until you get your permanent one?
No.
Oh.
So what I would recommend is bring your non-compliant ID. Most states, what they do is they give you a paper temporary, it's called the paper temporary license. Mm-hmm. Because what REAL ID, part of the security processes of REAL ID is also to control the printing. So no one can print a license illegally. So as a result of that, a lot of the printing of REAL ID is from a secure area that is centrally located. So states have elected economies of scale and efficiency to mail those to your home after they're printed. As a result, a lot of states will issue what they call a temporary license. It's just a piece of paper, and it doesn't even say that it's for a REAL ID. It just says it's a temporary license. Sometimes it'll have a little QR code and stuff like that. It'll have some documentation that points back to the state, but it's not documentation that can be validated at the TSA checkpoint. They're easily reproducible by anybody that has a inkjet printer at home or a laser printer at home. So they're not considered acceptable IDs. But bring your non-compliant ID, because most states, if not all, do give you back your non-compliant ID pending the receipt of your REAL ID in the mail. Technically, it isn't valid, your paper license is, but if you bring that in, the CAT machine can still validate that is a legitimate ID that traces back to you. If you come with just a piece of paper, it's as if you're coming with no identification at all, and then you'll have to follow procedures for individuals that don't have ID, and that takes a really long time. That's a little bit more arduous.
Okay, that's really helpful, George. Thank you. This is an interesting one, and I think this would probably be on the list as well, on that link you provided, but I don't know if you know this off the top of your head. Can a green card be used in lieu of a real ID?
I'm not sure what a green card is. Is that
I think that's with somebody that
the U.S. citizen
yeah,
employment authorization
yeah,
card?
and that has the right to work here in the United States, and it allows them to stay here. I believe that's
It's the I-766. I don't know if that's. I don't know what a green card is.
okay.
But if it's a I-766, then yes.
Okay. So maybe a little bit more digging into that. And again, I would check out the government website to be sure. Paper receipt. If you go to the Real ID with a paper receipt, blah, 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 enough to get through. Nope, I think we just covered that one in regards to paper. Someone forgets, and if someone forgets the Real ID but has global entry or KTN, would that be accepted? I don't know if that is on the list.
A global entry, if you have a trusted traveler card, a global entry trusted traveler card, that is an acceptable ID.
Great.
But a KTN is called a known traveler number. That's not an ID. That's simply a number that you enter during your the purchase of your airline ticket. And that information is sent to TSA along with your personal information run through the secure flight system and would facilitate you getting pre-check. But, that's not a number that you would present at the checkpoint as a means of identification. That makes sense? So the global entry is a card and serves as a piece of identification. The KTN is called the known traveler number, and it's not an identifier.
Okay, so two different things. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you. I think you have covered this, but just to be clear, if someone did show up at the airport without a real ID, they would go through additional screening, and if they again got through the screening, they could board their flight. But there will be cases, I'm assuming, where people may not go through even with the additional screening. Is that a true statement?
Well, I can't really say, what will happen. I could just say, that, TSA has procedures in place so that if travelers are abroad and they've had their ID stolen, they're on a trip and someone breaks into their hotel room, or they have their IDs and credit cards and things stolen, and they're somewhere where they just can't get another ID. We have processes, and these are individuals where, we serve to have an alternate form of identification process, and that has to take place away from the TSA checkpoint. So yeah, so if you show up without an ID, there are processes that can be used to validate your entry and proceed through the security screening process. So it's always better to have some sort of ID, even if it's a non-compliant real ID. Your best is to come with an acceptable ID. After that is to come with a non-compliant ID. But the last thing to show up with is not having any ID at all. That really should be, we want to reserve that for, those individuals that, that's their situation. They're stuck. They have to get back home. It is a time-consuming process. It has to be done away from the TSA checkpoint. And it requires additional resources to do that because, they have to move people away.
Okay. I'll ask, I think this question, you may have answered it, but is there a list of when states became Real ID enabled? Concern is with those that recently were enabled, so residents may be more likely not to have a Real ID. I think everyone was aware of this for all the states for a long time, but again, I can't say if they all we're promoting it, enabling it for a number of years. I don't. Maybe you can help enlighten us.
So I mean, there are states that have been certified since like mid 2000s and have already gone through 3 different cycles. You know, where your license expires, you renew, expires, renew, retires, renew. They went through 3 cycles, and they have a fairly low compliance rate state. And then there's some states that have been certified more recently, but I mean, you know, it was still about 5 years ago. So, but it came during the COVID pandemic, and they had severe restrictions on DMV access. So, yeah, we understand that there could be situations out there in which maybe a state, you know, was certified by this or that, but those generally are the, you know, are the exceptions. Most states have been certified, you know, well beyond 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, and so, yeah, I really don't know what to say.
Okay.
You know, so, you know, we're just enforcing the law, and then we're going to try to arrange it in a manner that, you know, we're going to enforce the law, and hopefully that will drive up people to get a real ID or another acceptable ID and bring to the airport.
Great. No, thank you, George. This is, I think, a good question. If someone makes it through the screening on their outbound flight without the proper ID, without a real ID, let's say, will that documentation assist with their connecting, or most importantly, the return flight? So if they got to their destination without the real ID because they went through additional screening, is that noted in their record? And how does that work for the return flight?
Well, no, we don't keep personal information at the TSA checkpoint. It's one of the very key things about TSA and about our screening process is that all the information is deleted within 72 hours. So no, we don't keep a record.
Okay.
We don't track people's travels and things like that. So if you have an onerous time screening at the beginning of your vacation, you may have just as onerous time screening on the return trip.
Okay. And David, can you give a time frame of what that might take from when the person actually gets to talk to someone about the additional screening? Is an hour, 2 hours?
I wouldn't know, but we're just advising people to come to the airport early.
Yep. Okay. So definitely, I guess everyone on the call with their clients and customers, again, the more time, the better, I would say, if they don't have the right credentials, the real ID. Let's see.
Yeah, I think the real challenge will be the morning. I think the biggest challenge will be the morning flights, because you know, you can't get at the airport 3 hours ahead for a 6 a.m. flight.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I think that we've heard a lot of airlines are thinking about having extra travel agents ready.
Great. For the DMV, with what they require to get a real ID, is that also on that on your webpage, George?
Yes, there's on the Real ID webpage is a map, and you just click the state, and it gives you all the information necessary to obtain a real ID for that state.
Perfect. Let's see, there's Ohio, make it through the screening, up on flight. I'm sorry, just going through the questions here. This is an interesting one. And David, I don't know, it's David. George, I don't know if you know this. I apologize. David's our other contact. George, is it true that at an AAA office, they can issue ID in Montana? Have you heard of any AAA offices in any state being able to issue a real ID?
I can't talk to that. I think in Connecticut there's some AAAs that have partnerships, but I mean that is specific to the state and whether the DMV has you know, sort of that contract with the AAA. So yeah, I'm not sure. You like you said, you'll have to contact the state. Every state is unique in its and how it does its licensing and issuance, and you have to go to that state directly.
Okay. Let me just see here. Will everybody flying after May 7th, whether you have a real ID or not, should they expect also maybe to experience some longer screening times to go through the TSA line?
I would like to say no, but I'm not so sure that there's a potential to experience delays when you have, even if you have acceptable ID. But I think TSA is going to be working to minimize, that to the maximum extent that they can, of course, based upon, the airport, space layout, and of course, how many people that we have working at the airport.
Okay.
We're going to do our best. What can I say?
Okay, awesome.
Okay, we really are. We're all going to do our best.
Okay.
But we are going to enforce the law. We're going to enforce Real ID starting on May 7th.
Okay, great. And then this is informational that someone had put in our question area here. According to the website, a passport or other ID can be expired for 2 years and still be used.
Yes, as long as it's an acceptable ID.
Okay.
So let's say you forgot to get your passport renewed. You go, oh my God, I don't have my passport. No, it's still good if it hasn't been expired for more than 2 years.
Okay, great. That's helpful. And I think kind of person travel with their country's passport. I think you answered that question. A foreign passport is acceptable.
Yes.
Yep. This will affect airlines because undocumented immigrants who are traveling by. The concern more than anything is for undocumented community. This will affect the airlines because undocumented migrants were traveling by air. This will certainly affect the airlines. But I think for anyone that has a foreign passport, that will suffice. Okay.
I didn't. Was that a question for me?
I think it was more or less. It was one whole kind of question. Can a person travel with a country's passport? And then it was their concern was with the undocumented community that had maybe gotten here by air could be affected. But I think the biggest question here is if you do have a passport from a foreign country, that does suffice, correct, George?
Yes. I'm not an immigration specialist.
Yeah, that again, I would refer to the government website to answer the second half of that question. But thank you for the question. Anyone flying after blah blah blah? And a lot of good questions. If anyone else has some, please send them in. This is a good one. Will there be a time travelers will be completely denied boarding without a real ID? No exceptions or additional screening will allow them to board. Will there be a time if you don't have it, even this additional screening process will not be in place?
I don't know. I mean, it's gonna. I don't know because, like I said, if you're in like, let's say you go on a trip and your ID is stolen, you go through an identity verification process. So I mean, it may be in the future that if you present a non-compliant card, it's like what I said, presenting a piece of paper from a DMV that says it's a temporary license, but you're going to be treated as if you do not have an ID.
Okay.
And you'll have the option of undergoing, alternative identification processes. Now, here's what I do know about the alternative identification processes is that we're only going to allow that for like very few instances, right? I mean, it's supposed to be an exception process. So, if someone, they say like, oh, I'm never going to get a real ID. I don't want to get a passport, but I'm sure I'll fly. I'll just suffer. If they go through that process, there'll come a time at which they'll say, you've been through this process too many times and you're not, go home.
Okay. No, thank you, George. That's, again, all this information is so helpful. This is an interesting question for minors. If they are 16 like younger than 18, but they look older than 18. In this case, they're saying, they're 6 foot tall and maybe look older than 18, but don't have an ID. What happens then?
So when tickets are purchased, you're required to put in your name, your sex, your date of birth. We know how old the individuals are based on the manifest information at the checkpoint. So it doesn't matter what they look like, whether they look 19 and they're 16, or they look 16 and they're 19. The manifest will say whether an ID is required. So if a family comes up, the CAT system or the TDC will know whether an ID is required.
Very good. And I think that answers the next question. If the person has no ID, a birth certificate acceptable. However, as you just stated, George, it should already be in their flight PNR, so to speak.
Yeah, what do you mean by birth certificate? A birth certificate is not a form of ID.
Right. This was referring to the previous question. If a person under 18 looked older than 18, what would be, how could they say, oh, no, I'm not. Would a birth certificate suffice? However, you just answered that question by saying it would be in the airline. It would be in the record when they purchased the ticket, the reservation record.
Right.
Does that answer your question, George? Okay, they don't.
It's an interesting question. Has anyone ever run into that?
I did. They're asking, so I'm assuming maybe. If a church group for youth under 18, again, if it's a group of youth, a church group traveling, they're all under 18. That should all be done at time of ticketing. Everyone's name would be entered in individually. I'm assuming their age would as well.
Yeah, is this for regular, like a flight on United at a regular airport, or like what we would call a private charter, like a teen traveling?
Yeah.
They're handled a little bit differently, but the fact of the matter is that the screening requirements generally apply, whether it's a private charter or on regular airplane that we see at going through the screening checkpoint and going to a boarding gate.
It would be flying regular flight is the answer to that question.
Yeah, it's to be subject to the same thing.
Let's see here. Wondering, so travelers could false birthday info when making the reservation. So the statement here is wondering if a traveler could give a false birth date when making their reservation. I don't know how the checks and balances is on that.
I'll have to get back with you because I'm not like the airline expert for that particular thing. So we'll take that back and bring it as a return information. But you have to understand that everybody's information is vetted through the secure flight system in advance.
Great, thank you. Let's see here. Info on persons each state. Yeah, I think this. There's a few questions similar to the under 18. I just want to let everyone know we will be sending this list of questions over to George and David and Simone to take a look at, and they will be able to either provide me that information and I'll reach out, or they'll be reaching out individually and directly to those questions. Let's see if there's anything else that we didn't cover. Is there any other questions that we didn't cover for the most part? If you could write that in, that would be great. A lot of it is about the screen. Yep.
So I have a quick question.
Yep.
Are you all expecting, a significant increase in travel this summer? I mean, I think we are. Is that what you all are seeing too?
Usually, usually for the summertime, definitely travel picks up because people are out of school, people are taking.
No, I mean versus last year. I mean versus last year.
Yeah, summer's high season. People are writing in. Whether it'll be more than last year, I don't know. I know some of the airlines are saying their travel may be flat, but yeah. So I think time will tell on that. But yes, we are definitely going into the busy season. And then, of course, Memorial Day weekend's coming up, and then obviously 4th of July will be big ones. Decrease from last year. Let's see. If I go to the DMV, do I need to carry my passport or birth certificate, my enhanced license? I think that is all on your website.
Yeah, the specific requirements for enrollment vary by state. Yeah, they're all very similar because what the program does is we set the minimum requirements for the security standards, but the states are the ones that implement it because it's their licensing. They're the sovereign entities issuing the identification, it's all their data. We don't, I hope that's people don't understand Real ID is not a tracking program. It's all done by the states. So yeah, you have to visit your individual state to determine, what are the requirements are. I do know that in Pennsylvania, starting in a certain year, even if you got a non-compliant license, you had to submit everything that was necessary for a Real ID. So like if you are from the state of Pennsylvania, you may be able to just go online and say, hey, I want a Real ID. And they already have the information there on file for you, including your picture, and they might mail you a Real ID and avoid a trip to the DMV.
Good to know. Yeah. So I think the real message is that everyone should check out their individual state's DMV to see what is exactly required, right, George? Okay.
Yes.
To answer the question about volume, some folks have answered. International's up, domestic is slowed, decrease in volume since last year. So yeah, probably to be determined what it's really going to look like. But I think I've been hearing more, flat or down. So
okay.
I think, well, the DMV ID is not a driver's license be acceptable. Yeah, I would, again, for all these questions in regarding the state and what they would need, like I just said, go to your state's DMV website and identify what is the criteria for acceptable forms of identification they will require for you to get that Real ID. We're pretty much at time. I want to thank especially George for being in Simone's place. And I apologize. I think I called you David a few times, but like I said, I deal with David all the time, George. So thank you for your patience on that and understanding. Thank you for being here with us today. This has been very helpful, very informative. And thank you for everybody that has taken the time out of your busy day to join us. Really great questions. We will have this presentation. I think someone asked to go back to the graphic, infographic. That will be coming to you in the recording. So please, and I can probably take that slide.
We have a file we can just send to you if you want to send out there.
Perfect. Then I will send that to the individual that asked for that. Mm-hmm.
It should be on the website that is on there which is the Real ID collateral.
Okay, great.
So if you go to www.tsa.gov/realid, there'll be a thing called collateral, and you could pick up the infograph there. You could pick up all professionally developed materials for web, internet, social media, print materials. They're all there. They're free, professionally made. Just take what you need.
Great. Thank you, George. That's really helpful and informational. Again, if someone needs it, just respond. You can always reach me at jhoward@artcorp.com. And I will get back to you as soon as possible. Otherwise, with any of these questions regarding Real ID, I'm told David Lim is the person And his email is right here, david.lim@tsa.dh.gov. Simone would also be there, but David's been really the main driver in regards to communication and helping Simone out and answer these, and George too. So I just want to say thank you again to everybody that attended. I hope this was helpful. George, thank you. I think Ann is a silent person still on the call here that helped us out from TSA. So thank you, Ann. And everyone, hope you join us for our next webinar that will be coming up on June 25th in regards to fraud awareness. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Judith.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.